everybody, welcome to another episode of From What I Gather, where today I got a special 2-for-1 episode. I'm making a classic fish cake, but the fish I'm using is smoked trout, so I'll go ahead and do that recipe too. There are a couple of great recipes that everyone's gonna love, so let's get started. So after our really fun trip down the Rogue River, I ended up bringing home about a dozen of these trout-sized steelhead, or half-pounders as they're known. So I'm going to go ahead and smoke these up right away. I'm going to smoke them whole. I'm also going to smoke them much faster at a higher temp to keep them nice and juicy inside rather than dried for preserving for a long time. These will be meant to be eaten right away or within a few days of smoking. I'm going to begin with my basic brine, and that's going to start with 1 gallon of ice cold water, to which I'll add 1/2 cup of plain salt, 1/2 cup of soy sauce for that umami, and then this time I'm using 1 cup each lightly packed brown sugar and white sugar. And I just need to stir this and stir this and stir this until everything is completely dissolved. That looks good. Now, I'm very simply going to pour this brine over my half-pounders. Just enough so that I can make sure they're all submerged. I'll stir them around a bit, make sure the brine gets all around them. And now this will go out into the refrigerator for at least 24 hours, but up to 48. So I've got my half-pounders here after 2 days in the brine, and outside I've got my smoker preheating to between 225 and 250 degrees. And I'm running alder wood today, as I always do with salmon and trout. Now since I'm going to cook these hot and fast, I don't have to worry about air drying them a whole bunch, but I do want to pat off the excess moisture with some paper towels, just so they're semi-dry, and that helps the smoke adhere. And I also want to make sure and dry out the cavity a bit. So just get off the excess moisture, and then I like to prop them open with some toothpicks so that we don't get a big collection of moisture on the inside. You just snap those guys off to fit, and I'd want 2 or 3 in there to hold that open and get the smoke to work around on the inside as well. Now at this high temperature, I expect these to take about 2 hours to cook, but I'm going to put the probe into one of the bigger ones, and I'm going to pull that when those hit at about 160. I got my tiny smoked steelhead, and let me tell you, they're great. I had one fresh and hot out of the smoker last night with a nice salad, perfect serving for one person. And the rest of these I can keep in the refrigerator for up to 2 weeks. They make a perfect little snack for when you're on the go, a lunch when you're on the work side or in the office. You whip out a whole steelhead and tear into it, and people are gonna notice, I guarantee. But I'm gonna make some delicious little fish cakes out of that, and the first step is gonna be to break these guys down and pick all the bones away from the meat. So now it's pretty easy to break one of these guys down. The first thing I'm gonna do is just to peel the skin off, and it should come off pretty easily. There, no trouble at all there. And now you can see this line here, this lateral line as it's called, right here. And I'm just going to push a fork in there and rake the meat, pulling it backwards right off of the bone. And there's one loin, I guess you could call it. And then I'm going to do the same thing down below. And there's some on the ribs here that's a little tougher. And now I can generally grab the spine right up the top, get a hold of that, and pull that whole thing out of there. Ooh, yeah. Now, get the rest of the skin off. Boom. So, this top portion, sort of from here to the front of the fish, there's going to be some pin bones in there. And there's some rib bones here, but those rib bones you can pop off real easily. Just peel them right off of there. However, the pin bones up in here are a little more fiendish, and you're actually going to have to break that portion up a little bit to find them. And there's those pin bones right there, and you got to work a little to get those out of there. That is the hardest part about this. Now I'm going to pick through all these fish and get some nice clean meat for our fish cakes. I've done my best to debone the fish, and now I'm going to break it down into some small flakes and little chunks for the fish cakes. I'm not going to go too tiny because I want some of that fish texture left in the cakes. That looks just about right. And I've got about a pound of clean fish here. Now I'm going to saute some veggies to mix in with our fish cakes. I'm going to start by melting some bacon fat in a pan on medium heat. And to that, I'm going to add about 3/4 of a cup of finely chopped onion and 3/4 of a cup of these little multicolored sweet peppers. They're kind of like bell peppers, but they're those little baby kind. Add a nice big pinch of salt to that. It's been about 5 minutes and the onions are starting to get soft and a little clear, so I'm going to throw in a couple of tablespoons of capers and a couple of cloves of minced garlic. And I'm just going to cook that for a minute or so to get that garlic warmed up. Man, that smells like a pizza. Now this is ready, and I'm going to actually set this outside to cool down completely before moving on. Now let's put our fish cake batter together. Of course, I've got my smoked steelies here, and I'm going to put in all those sauteed veggies. Now remember, you can do this with any fish you like, any cooked fish. This is great with salmon that hasn't been smoked, tuna especially, you name it, rockfish. And now I'm going to add a nice amount of fresh ground black pepper. I like a lot in here. Now I'm going to add in 1/4 of a cup of mayonnaise. Shout out to friend of the show, Mayo. What's up, buddy? And now, of course, my fresh green pop is some fresh parsley, and I'm gonna add in some fresh chives from the yard. So that was a couple of tablespoons of parsley and about a tablespoon of chive. I'm gonna want a little bit of heat in that, a little bit of hot sauce, just a little bit. You know, I like a little spice and everything. Let's mix that together, not too hard. Oh, all right, I see another bone. You're never gonna get them all, I tell you, but that's how they're gonna know you made it yourself. And you don't want to stir that real hard. You just want to toss everything together and not break that fish down into tiny little threads, but leave some nice chunks in there. Now, if you're squeamish about raw egg, now's the time to taste this and check your flavor. I am not squeamish about raw egg, but I'll check it now anyway. I like a little more black pepper. And I like a little more of that hot sauce and the acid and the heat of the hot sauce. And now I'll throw in 2 eggs. Stir those in pretty well. And now, once that's all incorporated, I'm going to add in dry breadcrumbs, just enough to get these to hold together. I want it to be mostly fish, but you need some crumbs for some texture and to get these to hold their shape. So I'll just add those and mix until I feel like I have enough, and then we'll see where we end up. Looks like that's going to use the whole cup. And now I'm going to put this in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes to let that bread soak up those juices and puff up. And you can make these a lot of different sizes. You can make them kind of tiny little silver dollar size for a party little hors d'oeuvres, or a real big full sandwich size for like a burger. I like to go somewhere in between, but whatever you choose, you just don't want to go too thick. About a 1/2 inch thick at the most. Otherwise, the outsides are going to get overdone while the insides are not cooked through. You also don't want to pack these super hard and tight. Just enough to get them to hold their shape. That way they'll stay pretty light in the middle. Now there are a couple of ways to do this. You can fry them up as is, and that's how I like to do it. But you can also hit these with some egg wash and then into those breadcrumbs again and make an extra crunchy version. So we're going to do some of each. Just put this guy right into the egg wash. The egg wash will stick fine here, so there's no need to hit it with flour first. And then just lightly toss it in those panko breadcrumbs or whatever dry breadcrumbs you got. Cracker crumbs, you know. You know the drill. And we'll just let those breadcrumbs set up on there while we're heating up the oil. So I'm just going to heat up some plain old vegetable oil. You don't want these to cook too hot, so like medium at the highest, maybe even a little bit lower. We're talking 320, 325 probably, because they do tend to burn on you before the insides get done, and you want these to cook all the way through. Now I'll do the old wooden skewer trick to see if my oil's ready, and that is I poke in a little wooden skewer, and if it starts to sizzle, then it's hot enough. You can also take a little piece of that breadcrumb and throw it in and see that it starts to fry. And that seems about right. I don't want these to get in there and start hissing and popping real hard right away, because that would be too hot. There's our straight ones and now our extra crunchy. I think my pan's got a bit of a hump in the middle. That's not particularly desirable in a pan. It was inexpensive, so I'll live with it for now. I might flip these 2 or 3 times. If they start to get a little overdone on one side, I flip them over and let that cool down. Hit the other side a little bit and kind of go back and forth like that so they don't get too dark on either side. That looks pretty good. I've been going about 12 minutes and some of these are getting to be done, so I just want to transfer them over to a wire rack to cool off. And I'll just pop them over there as they get done. You can kind of, if you tap on them, you can kind of feel them getting a little lighter and puffier when they're all the way cooked through. Now let's see how we did. Well, it certainly looks good. Let's give it a try. Woo! Oh yeah, that's a hell of a cake. It's not too dense. It's got a really nice and crunchy crust. That smoked trout really packs a punch that works well with the sweet onions and those sweet peppers. This would go well with all kinds of dipping sauces, so just pick your favorite. And remember, you can make this recipe using any cooked fish you want, let alone crab. Who doesn't love a crab cake?
Did somebody say crab cake?
Shh. I really hope you try this, and I know you're gonna love it. And if you do, please like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.